Two, one, and all systems go. Excited to have you guys on today. Listen, we got a stellar group up. Big drops this week. Excited for all that is brewing. We got Delta Sauce's views dropping. We got AI Surrealism with Super Chief NFT Gallery, the first NFT gallery in New York City. Black and DVK participating in that. And just an exceptional group of artists all around. Austin, Lord of the Cats, Lug Gang World on. We got Nikki Sapinero as well joining us. Nikki Sap, DVK Black, and Delta Sauce himself live in the flesh. Gentlemen, excited to have you guys today. What's going on, guys?
Let's go. Ready.
What's up?
Ecstatic. Delta, how are you feeling about drop, man? Are you like excited? Are you stressed? What's the vibes right now?
I'm a little bit nervous and a little bit excited for it because it's been in the works for 10 months for me, and it's just been a blast to work on. Black was there the whole time. He was there on the sidelines listening to what I was going through when I was working on this collection, and
Looking through the windows.
but like honestly, like I'm excited. I really as an artist, I try to set my expectations low. Like it could sell out in 5 minutes, it can sell out in a week or a month. It doesn't really matter. I just want people to be happy with the artwork and the experience of collecting. So really, whatever happens tomorrow happens.
Dude, I think that's like a common theme amongst artists that I've just like spoken to recently. I think artists that are doing well in this space as well. I remember Austin on a space of yours last week, or of Nihilis's, I think it was like the AOE one. You were talking about how just like, caring about the results of things can sometimes lead people to almost feel like they're seeking something from others, and how oftentimes it's way more productive if you just go into it not exactly caring about sales or how things pan out, but just simply like doing it for the process, seeing what happens. It's more genuine as a result, and then oftentimes leads to better results.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have I've done art my whole life. I started, with painting and drawing and then moved into music and, put stuff out on social media in all these mediums, after music did photography and digital art as I'm doing now. And with so many things I've tried to drop and release, it's like 9 times out of 10, you really don't know what's going to happen. Like Delta said, you don't know how it's going to go. And it's like, you're way better off just going in with the expectation or lack thereof, like almost no expectation, like you said, and just trying to have fun with it and just putting out work you enjoy. I mean, really, like, what can go wrong, really? I mean, the best thing you can do is just put out whatever you've worked really hard on, and the right people will resonate with it. And I think that's what matters at the end of the day. And it might take a little while, and that's the thing. I have, put work out, especially in this space, that sat for months, and then out of nowhere it just all moved in a matter of a few days. And I think really that is just thanks to making connections with people with the right intentions and not having expectations of those people and just vibing out with people that you really resonate with. And I think that's one of the most important things you can do in this space is just have fun and just vibe out with people that you fuck with, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Hell yeah, man. Damn, there's another thought that I had. I feel like it's happening to me too much today where I'm having these thoughts and I'm just slipping my mind. But yeah, I do think that is a huge, huge thing just to like keep in mind. Oh, and I feel like if one is like financially pressed, I think that becomes tougher because like, you might be relying on a particular sale for you to do well and sustain yourself. But if not, I feel like there's honestly like a crazy level of fun in that, of just like you don't know how these things are going to pan out. And as you said, Austin, it's like you might drop this and be like, damn, like fuck, like something didn't perform as well as one would have liked. But then like 3 months later, like everything sells at once for like the weirdest reason, and it's like, oh shit. I feel like that's got to be pretty invigorating when that does happen.
No,
Yeah.
go ahead, Austin. No, go ahead, Austin.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say really quick. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I love about specifically this space is that I wake up with this excitement every morning. Like anything can happen, because that's been my experience so many times, and I think it's been the experience of many people. Like you just be working on art or just talking to people, or you wake up in the morning and you see like you have multiple bids on a single piece or multiple sales, and it just happens out of nowhere, and it's like when you least expect it. And that's the thing, like anything can happen in this space. The space does move really fast, and that's something that kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat at times, but at the same time it's really exciting, and it makes me a bit more hopeful that really, again, anything can happen.
Hell yeah, man. I think a good example of that is what happens when we're looking through the windows. And Delta brought up a good. We were talking before the stream started. Also, I want to call out if everybody doesn't mind like sharing the pinned tweet, would appreciate that. Want to get as much turnout and make as much noise for everybody on here. And also join us on YouTube under the pinned tweet. If you click and like go to the second tweet, you can catch the YouTube link and catch these pretty faces on video. Yes, sir. But Delta, so you're talking about how Black was kind of helping you out through the creative process. And Black, I want to hear your perspective on how you felt like Delta has gone on this roller coaster of putting views together. How do you feel like what's been going through his head, all of the ups and downs, etc.?
Well, I think like with any project, especially one at a size like that with such volume, you definitely second guess yourself. I think that's sort of part of being an artist. And I mean, I do that all the time. And I think like you're always trying to put out the best thing, but then at some point, there's also like this level of execution that has to be hit too. Like, no matter what, you got to hit this certain number by a certain time. And there, that deadline's always looming. And so there's like this balance of wanting everything to be the best it can be, and also being able to be realistic with timing and stuff. And so from what I've seen Delta go through during that time and what he shared, during the process, there's like this evolution that has occurred. And then inside of that, it's like, well, now, certain techniques or tooling or processes may have been improved over time. And so, look, because I think Delta, you started earlier in the year. I mean, February, March.
Yeah, around February and March, I started. Yeah. And like the technology, like AI grows at such a fast rate and the technology changes. And as an artist, you develop new techniques and new skills, and, you want to implement those. So it's just like, not only is it a timeline of like this progression, it's also like, for me, it's just like my love of movies and film. It's just showcasing that on a bigger level. And it also, it's like a little bit of a motif towards my collection last year with Mirage Gallery, where I did doorways. I did a collab, like 250 piece collection of doorways last year. So it's really just a continuation of that collection, just based around windows now.
So wait, there's like multiple things I want to touch on there. Also, like I want to encourage everybody up here, like feel free to cut me off, jump in, ask questions. Like there's no structure to this whatsoever. But so Delta, I saw, that the idea was kind of like brewing for like 10 months starting back in February. Did you organize this with Braindrops and say like, hey, we're going to like work on this drop and like launch it down in the future or whenever it's ready? Or was it just like the seed of the idea? Like you kind of just started playing around with Windows 10 months ago, and then like over time, this is kind of what it's grown into?
Well, Justin contacted me about 8 months ago, and we had around 8 to 10 months ago, we had a long conversation. We had a good conversation, and we did back and forth ideas on like collection direction, and just ideas on what I could touch on with my collection. And I had a very different idea when I first started, but I kind of pivoted like 2 months in and decided to go this direction. And honestly, like the ideation probably took like 2 to 3 months. Like I was working on it in early February, late March, and then that's when inspiration struck, and I went towards the direction of the collection that I'm doing right now, which is Windows. So.
Gotcha. I think that's dope, man. And like, why? I've read a little bit about it in the tweet that's pinned to your profile, and I'll pin it up also to the Twitter space in a moment. But want to hear from you, why Windows? Like, what does the window mean to you?
To me, last year when I did my door collection, I did it, and it sold out in a month, and I was really happy with it because, like, for me, it allowed me to open the door to be a full-time artist. Like, it allowed me that opportunity to like quit my job and do art full-time. And to me, that was really representative of like my art career and what I want to do. And for the windows, like there's this representation of like looking into other realities, looking into like different worlds, and being inspired, and also as a way of self-reflection, because like in my life I've always felt like the spectator. I've never been the main character, so I'm always looking at other people's like journeys and whatnot, and I always felt like not the main character. So the windows really represent that. And as a movie lover, we go to movies to be immersed in new worlds. We go to movies to listen to new stories. We're the spectators of the film. So that's really what I wanted to touch on with the collection, because like I've always felt like the spectator. We back in like high school, middle school, I was always staring out the window and daydreaming. And really, this is really just a hallmark of that, and just a continuation of that thought.
I think it's been really fascinating just like seeing how the tooling and also like the process we were talking earlier has sort of evolved over time, and like and how like you went back through and like things maybe maybe you didn't feel like you were unhappy with them, but you saw what you were doing then versus now in that moment, and like updating those things and tweaking it here and there, and like really going through and doing it. I think it's a testament towards the process with utilizing AI, how the tooling definitely affects like how things are done and what the process is. And I think that's really fascinating to think like you have a collection, such a high volume, hundreds of works. And I think it's easy for someone looking on the outside looking in. I think it's easy for someone to say, oh, it's just, just press a button, bro, kind of a thing. But really, like, these things have been refined over such a long period of time, and every single one of them is hand worked on. Every single one of them is, and I definitely have seen that process evolve for you over time. And I can just, as I went through all of them, looking at them as you shared with me a week or two ago, that was my thought too, is that they all have their own individual quality while also being fitting inside the same collection, but having that like extreme sense of diversity and just sort of like hand done feeling, and just like you can really see that you put the effort into those things. And I just find that to be really fascinating with something that's at a high volume. Like, it's one thing to say that about individual pieces or a really small series or something, but when you're looking at such a high volume, like the value is there. I mean, it's insane.
No, and I went back in like probably like 4 or 5 months ago, and I deleted half the collection. Like I had this collection done a while ago, but I went back and I was unhappy. I'm like, I can do better, and I want to do better. And me and Justin actually reviewed over it, and he pointed out some things I could work on. And I appreciate that when I'm working with someone like that, and it's not really they're giving me directions on what I need to do. They're just giving me advice, and you can take that advice and you don't have to use it. You can take it or not. And for me, it was really like paramount advice to make a better collection, and it has allowed me to push myself harder. And honestly, I'm really glad like the direction I went and the new techniques that came out during this, because I learned a lot during this. I learned a lot of new processes that I've added to my one-of-ones that I've worked on since the beginning of this collection and today. I mean, I've learned so much working on this collection, and I'm really happy with it.
Dude, so many great points there. And I think, Black, you answered a question that I wanted to ask, and wanted to confirm this with you, Delta, that each piece is like you actually hand created each piece. So like I know they're AI, you leverage AI to use them. But my question was, are they like generative in the sense that like they were put together algorithmically, or it's like you just leveraged AI to create each individual of the 500?
I leveraged AI to create each individual, but I also went in and did some hand touch-ups, because like for me, I have to touch my work. I want to touch it in one way or another. And these weren't full edits like I normally do for like my one-of-ones or my short, like smaller series, but like they've been tweaked. I've gone in and erased some things and tweaked some things up, because like I'm not a big fan of just raw AI. Like it's just not me. It's just not where I've come from. And I have this background in sculpting and woodworking, and I just like being able to be hands-on. I mean, today I shared a little bit of my process behind a new one-of-one that I'm working on, and it's just like going in and getting these incomplete images and then fixing them up and sculpting around them and making them these complete images that are cohesive. And I really do compare my process to collage art. Like I love stitching together stuff, and this collection views kind of like pushed me to go a little bit away from that, because I couldn't spend the amount of time I wanted to on each piece. So I was going for more pure outputs and more perfect outputs like that.
Damn, dude, so much to cover here. I like wanted to dive into each of the pieces individually. We can't actually see the pieces yet, right?
No, they're not. These are just a snippet of what all 500 pieces are. No one's really seen the whole collection yet. And
Gotcha.
I have some gems in there. I've got inspired by artists in the space, and I made homages to those artists. So I'm really happy to see who gets what, and like people to point it out in the timeline, and tag the artist that they think it's inspired by.
That's hype. That's funny. I remember when we jumped on the stream to talk about Nomadic Novo with you, DVK, and Black. you guys had like Easter eggs hidden throughout. And I was telling DVK before with his piece in AI Surrealism, I was like looking for Easter eggs now because I know you could like hyper zoom in on his pieces and the
Yeah.
quality maintains. But on that, so excited to look for the Easter eggs. I'm sure, I think that's better seen than discussed, so I won't even ask you about it. But on the movies, you mentioned movies earlier. I know they were a big influence. I remember you wrote about it a little bit as well somewhere in here. What movies in particular do you feel like had the biggest influence on the collection? And just kind of want to throw it to the group as well. Like, what are some of your guys' favorite movies across the board?
Honestly, like there's too many to name. There's like way too many to name. Like Small Soldiers. I'm looking at the collection right now. Planet of the Apes and Jurassic Park, and just so many, like so many classics. Like there's a bit of Fight Club, Training Day. There's a little bit of Training Day references, and Terminator, and stuff like that. Because it's just those are films that I grew up with. Those are films that I enjoyed growing up. And as a kid in the '90s, my parents were workaholics. So my mom's a waitress and my dad's a carpenter. So they weren't ever home. So all I had was my TV. Like that's all I had, and my neighbors sometimes. But like that's really all I had growing up. So I immersed myself in those worlds, and I just love the subject matter when it comes to cinema.
Hell yeah, man. Did any of those resonate across the board, or does anybody have any other movies to throw in?
So many resonate across the board. Definitely, I think we vibed out about a couple of things last time. Black, DVK, and Delta, we all chatted, talking about Space Odyssey, Back to the Future, and things like that. I love seeing those references in the work, but I like seeing the references without it being like, I don't know, trite. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so, I think a lot of like pop artists and stuff, like they lean so heavily on the source material that they forget that it needs to also be kind of their own thing. Whereas the way you guys lace the cinematic elements into your work, it's subtle. It feels like the work speaks for itself, and you're adding this element that if you know, you know, and it's cool to see, you know, who kind of picks up on it, and some people might not. That to me is like way doper than just like a straight up pop art piece. So definitely excited to see. I have a quick question though for Delta. 500 pieces is insane. How's the mint going to go? Is it blind, or do you know what you're getting? How's that going to work?
So 30 minutes before the public mint, there's going to be a pre-mint, and there's probably going to be 100 minted in that period. It really doesn't go over that much. And once pre-mint's done, it's just a blind public mint, and you get what you get, you know? So
Surprises. It's like you throw your hand in the goodie bag and see what comes out.
no, it's going to be great. Like it doesn't, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter if it sells out in 5 minutes, a week, or a month. I just want people to be happy with the experience of collecting and just, you know, chatting about it. And that's what I'm really interested in. I'm really interested in discussions after the drop, because like for me, that's what really motivates me as an artist, is just to be able to talk about it and just, you know, in depth and just go over it. And I'm really hoping that when it does drop, there's going to be a lot of discussion over it.
I think agreed, and I think that one of the things that's going to facilitate that is the traits. I think the traits is such like an interesting aspect that you added to it. Can you run us through that, man? I know like the primary three are, I believe there's radical, there's divergent, and there's simpatico, right?
Yep. And those are broken down into secondary traits, and there's tertiary traits. And the secondary traits are just location, like urban, forests, mountains, and stuff like that. And then the third trait is either it's a facade or it's a frame. And I love this. And for me, it's just like, that was the hardest part. I would say once you get into the flow state of making artwork and knowing the direction you want to take the collection, the part then after is going through and assigning all the traits, because that took me probably like 3 days just to go in and do all the traits by hand and just make sure everything matches up and everything's good. And what ended up happening was I did all 500 traits. I actually had more than 500 pieces. Like I had way more than 500 pieces. I ended up hitting 750. And what ended up happening was me and Justin talked about the collection, and I went in and honestly, like I deleted like 400 of them. I deleted like just deleted them. I didn't like them.
They don't exist anymore. Like
They do. They exist, but they're not part of the collection. I
Gotcha.
felt that they were too weak, and I needed to work on it and like hone my skills better. And because I wanted to refine the collection, so I went in and redid all the trade. Well, I redid all the pieces and got back up to 500, and then I went back in and did all the traits again.
Damn, man. I think that's dope. I want to ask you guys, just as a group, do you guys feel that like you get frustrated with work sometimes and you literally like do delete it entirely off your computer or just you like get rid of it? I was out here at Station 3 in New York. So Molly McCutcheon, an artist friend, exceptional artist. I remember she was working on a study one time and just got like pissed off and then like she just burnt it. So I want to ask you guys, like, do you feel like you get frustrated sometimes that you like don't literally want the piece to exist anymore?
I've definitely felt that way with like painting. I think more so than AI stuff. I think the AI stuff for me is like I have such a huge bin of images that there's no real like throwing away. But like I've looked at, I've had paintings before where I just hate it. Like I absolutely hate it, and then like a month later, I feel like it's something I absolutely love. Like I feel like it's. I actually went through that process a lot with painting, and I think it's like something. You put so much. I think what happens is you put so much time into something very specifically into like one thing that maybe it's like oversaturated in your mind. And I also think it depends on what it is. Like a lot of stuff I've done is like abstract expressionism type oil paintings, and I think that stuff is like it can never be perfect. It can never be bad at the same time. It's sort of like completely open for interpretation. So as the artist sitting there trying to make something out of it, you can just like read way too much into it in terms of like how you feel about it, and you get this like really weird emotional kind of experience with that. With the AI stuff, it's like I feel like I already have so much stuff thrown away because this all just exists in download folders and Google Drives, and there's hundreds of thousands of images that no one will ever see. Like I think that's sort of in a way like being thrown away.
Well, you create so many sketches with AI, and you get to look through and curate through a lot of works that you may never finish. But there is a part there where you, kind of throw them away before even finishing them. So that of course eliminates some of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because like with AI, I feel like you're creating all these like images, but they really are like what DVK said, like they're sketches like along the road. Like they're all sort of like that. It's as similar as if you just were doing like what I would call studies. I used to make my GM and GM posts. I used to call them studies for a really long time. That's how I look at it from like a traditional artist sense of like you're making these studies of things when like anyone else can look at them on the surface and just say like, oh, that's like a finished product. Like it could appear as a finished product. But I think what happens in our space, it's like there's this path that you're going down that is conceptually driven, where like you're trying to achieve this concept of something, much less like a final product. Like the final product can just be an image. But a lot of times with things you're working on, like a lot of stuff I've been posting a lot lately, the more like psychedelic, grungy, collagey type stuff, all that is like going somewhere, like conceptually. It's like on its way somewhere. And you could take any one of those and say, oh, here's like a finished image. But this doesn't necessarily mean that like that's like a final piece. Like it may or may not have already arrived at the final concept and like hitting that level of execution of the conceptual execution, even though it may have a physical or a digital execution of being a final image. It's not there like philosophically or conceptually or something like that yet.
No, and I like this subject because like for me, like it's about finding that imperfect image when it comes to AI, and then knowing that I can go in and edit it, and then go through my post processing and just be hands on with it. Like that's really my goal. My goal isn't like to generate a perfect AI image that represents my thoughts at that moment in time. It's to find this imperfect piece of like stone and then go in and then just smooth it out by hand. And really that's where I discover a more deeper meaning and a more deeper understanding for the artwork itself. Like I don't come in with this idea of like I want to generate this exact scene that's in my head. I come in and I want to get this vague image of the idea that's in my head outside to AI, and then go in and then just hand hand edit it down basically and just be hands on with it. Because like for me, I come from the sculpting and woodworking background, and I love being hands on, man. I love just being able to pick up something and then turn it into something else. Like I find that process very fascinating and relaxing.
Yeah, I think that's why your work resonates with so many people and hits with me, honestly, because like I really enjoy a good amount of AI art, and there's a lot of people that I like. There's two artists that there's one that I've collected from, two that I know really well, and one of them have like explained their process to me, and it's like, people kind of look at a lot of AI art, and yeah, there are some people that just, they get an image out of Midjourney, they prompt it doesn't take too much time, and you can kind of tell. I think it's become easier and easier to tell when people are putting in real effort. And like everyone in here, you can tell when you look at their work, they're putting in like, a lot of time to do extra work and post-processing and things like that and working with their hands. And I think that's the thing, like the artists that are using it, that are using AI, those are the people that are going to make really cool stuff with it. And then there's going to be people that just kind of casually just prompt things and just generate things for fun. But the artists that have experience, maybe working with another medium, whatever that is, or have just that, that will to really craft something that is like really solid and like really masterful. I think those are the people that are really going to make cool pieces with, with the tech. And that's what I've seen with, all you guys up here.
I think like in the last year or so, like a year and a half, 2 years ago, the beginnings of this technology, a lot of it was very exploratory. And I was like, oh, what if I try to do this with this tool? What do I get out of it? Like that was sort of the mentality. And I think that's what created a lot. And that's sort of when I entered in. I know several of us kind of came into the space at that moment. And there was a lot of exploration that was happening. And as things have evolved, I don't want to say like that's not enough, but I think like the exploration phase is the foundation now. Like you have to know what you're exploring and you have to test things out and see what works. And there is this part of the process, part of this building block that is exploring the technology. But then you got to have the idea, you have to have the philosophy, the concept, the level of execution, the compositing and upscaling and detailing and narrative building and all these other things. And it's not just throwing something out there. That doesn't invalidate art coming from the other side or coming from the exploration process. A lot of stuff I make is very exploratory. It's just kind of, seeing what sticks. But I think that when you really start to develop out your path and like the artistic journey here, a lot of that is built on execution. And that's significantly more involved than just the exploration process.
Do you feel like these tools almost like advance at a rate where it's frustrating because like as you start to master something and you think you get good at it, like that tool becomes outdated? Does it frustrate you guys almost, the level of
I wouldn't say it frustrates us because we've gotten I've been here since 2021. I've been using AI since 2021, and it's changed leaps and bounds over the years. And honestly, like you can't really master AI. You can master one tool if that tool never updates and there's no changes to it, but like you can't really be a master of AI because there's so many tools. Like Pika just came out with a new update recently, and then Magnifique came out with the new tooling, and it's just like you can't really keep up. Like every day there's a new tool coming out, and it's just like there's not enough time to go in and dive in and to actually learn the tool like 100%. And that used to not be the case. I mean, like back when Disco was around, Disco Diffusion and Jax and Piety were around, like you could really get deeply immersed in those because there were such like there wasn't that many tools back then. Like there wasn't a lot of tools back then, and there wasn't a lot of big update. Like there was a big update, probably once every 2 months or so, but otherwise, no, you get to learn the tools. You get to be really hands-on with those tools. And nowadays, it's just like there's a new update for Midjourney every few months, every few weeks now it feels. And it's just like you can't really master these tools. It's not possible, I don't think.
I've definitely had frustrations before. I think like when models get updated or changed, especially with Midjourney or something that's sort of like outside of your control. But at the same time, like through that, I think this is very much like a philosophy on life, though. I think it's just like trying to hold on to something that is receding is just not a good thing in general. And so it's like you almost like you just have to like let go of that and embrace what is happening, and then you end up achieving something different. And so you have to let go of one thing to pick up something else, And so I think like this space is moving so quickly. a lot of the things that are happening that are new are happening because old things don't work anymore, or old things are updated or whatever. And like that's a part of it. I don't think this is maybe the first time in art history that's really been the case in a very like real time way, because I don't think many artists have experienced this type of evolutionary change in the tooling that they're using in such a fast-paced environment like we have. And adapting to that is really difficult. I think psychologically it's really difficult. Emotionally it's really difficult because you attach yourself to your work and what you have into it, and you're loving the thing that you do. And it scares me to think like I may not be able to make something again in the way that I was doing it before. But every time I hit that point and I do feel that way, I embrace whatever the change is and I adapt to it to either achieve something better in the same way, or I adapt to it to do something completely different. And then I arrive at something else that I would not have arrived at. So there's this very like real time experience that's happening, and you can't hold too tightly onto those things in order to achieve whatever's coming next.
I really enjoy the part that it's constantly changing and developing. I'm the kind of digital nerd that I love to dive into these different programs and tools, no matter what they are. So whenever there's something new, it's kind of like you can feel almost like it's time to play with a new thing again. I mean, I mean, I enjoy that part with exploring. I mean, I enjoy when I don't know things, and so you could say that compared to like jumping into the deep sea, I enjoy that part. And the part where I post process and edit a sketch or create my own style to that piece, that doesn't change. You can say it develops over time, of course, how I do that, but it doesn't change drastically. So it doesn't matter what in a sense, it doesn't matter what the tool is. I mean, if you use Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or one of the newer ones, you can still get your kind of style into it. I'd say, at least for me, that's not an issue. So, but yeah, I really like to just dive into those and then mix them and use them across. So yeah, take things from one AI tool and put it over into another one, and sometimes just experiment and see what happens with this.
Yeah, I'm having a thought, like a deja vu thought, that I remember I had on like the last Nomadic Novo stream, and I feel like if we were in more ancient times, and you guys could not be artists, I feel like DVK, I feel like you would be an engineer, with like your the way you love like diving deep into tech. I feel like Black would be a philosopher, and I feel like Delta would be like an orator that everybody just rallies behind.
Yeah, I'd probably be like creating wings or something and trying to fly, or I don't know.
When you said wings, I immediately thought chicken wings. But
Okay, I'll make some chicken wings as well, just for later.
Nikki, I feel like you were gonna jump in.
No, that's hilarious. First of all, no, it's like crazy how many bookmarks I have on Twitter right now of all the different tools. I was just scrolling through as you guys were talking. Like, you're right, Pika just came out. Stable Diffusion has a video model now. There's Stable Diffusion Turbo. You can talk to it now. But I think what it comes down to, and you guys kind of basically said this, but it's a tool belt, right? You have a variety of tools at your disposal, just like you did with traditional graphic design and art, even going to the physical realm. You know, you have a variety of mediums that you can create something with. And you use the ones that make sense to you. You kind of toss the ones that don't. These businesses as well many of them will fail, right? So even though a lot of them are really useful or really cool, they still have to make money in order to succeed. So at some point, the successful ones will consolidate with the less successful ones, and you'll just, it won't feel as overwhelming, I think, to those that it feels overwhelming to have a million tools. You'll just have sort of like we have Photoshop and Illustrator and a couple of other things, that most of us use, right? It'll eventually get to that point. But right now it's just like, it's the Wild West. We're just having fun with it. It's wild how creative you can get, though. Like, I'm watching some people do incredible things, like you generate something in Midjourney, then throw it in the new Runway app, which has like sort of customized motion where you can like just draw around on objects within the frame and have them animate. Like, we're going to start seeing insane products coming out, insane things to consume as fans of art, that I think rival magic. Like, it is legit magic. It looks like Harry Potter. You guys probably feel like Harry Potter when you're creating. You guys have also inspired me, to be honest. Like, listening to your processes over the past couple of months as we've gotten to know each other, and just learning a little bit more on my own. I've gone in and I've done what you guys have said. You know, I've tried to generate stuff a lot of times based on pictures that I take in the real world, and I throw them into Midjourney, and I start like compositing them together and stuff. I'm not saying it's any good or I'm going to be selling anything anytime soon, but I wanted to know, you know, like, you know how like people that are super into food but don't know how to cook. Like, I don't want to be that kind of
Foodies.
person. Exactly. Like, so I didn't want to be the foodie of art. So I really respect what you guys are doing. Now seeing the challenges that are presented with compositing photos and doing all these things that you guys talk about all the time. It's been really fun to learn though as well. So mad props to you guys. I just want to throw that out there.
Damn, Nikki, you're doubling as CEO of Divi Labs and also like dabbling in art as well.
Chronically online, bro. All I do is just pretty much sit at a computer or go for runs. Other than that, that's it. I got to eat at some point too.
I hear you, man. I love the Divi Labs website, by the way. I checked it out before.
Thank
I
you.
just thought the animations I had so much fun with.
Glad to hear that, man.
By the way, on what you said, Nikki, I think we're still like, let's say there's a mountain of AI coming in front of us, and we're still at the foot of the mountain. We haven't seen nothing yet. We haven't seen anything yet. There's gonna be, you know, you're thinking there's so many tools already, and it's impossible to keep up. It's gonna get way more crazy. There's so many companies that you haven't heard of yet that they're working on something, in all kinds of direction, music, 3D, you know, there's gonna be creating whole game worlds with just a prompt. It's gonna be something like that maybe in 2 years. You're gonna prompt something and somebody can go and play it immediately.
It's actually a dope idea.
I've seen something like that. It's pretty rudimentary at the moment, but it's getting there. I showed it to one of my game dev buddies, and he's like, every time I send a tool to somebody who's in the field that is kind of being challenged by the tool, they're always like, yeah, I could see like maybe as a you know, templating tool, but it's not there yet. And I'm like, yeah, of course it's not there yet. But like 5 years from now, you're not going to be able to say that anymore. You really it's really getting there.
I want to take a quick moment to just shout out everybody that's joining. If you aren't on the YouTube live stream, definitely grab that from the pinned tweet above. Or below the pinned tweet, you can grab the YouTube link. And also, if you guys don't mind resharing and repinning or retweeting the pinned tweet, would appreciate that. Want to make as much noise for everyone up here. But also want to talk about, Nikki, you made a good point before on how like weird things are going to get like with these AI tools, just because it's like, you know, we're kind of like breaking new bounds, and each tool is going to allow for a different functionality, and artists are going to get creative with it. And I find that kind of ties into the AI Surrealism collection, I think, that Super Chief just dropped on Foundation, or the moment they just dropped with it, very, very well. And honestly, Delta, even looking at views, I feel like the Divergent trait, like what I saw from the Divergent trait, I would also consider Surrealism. And I kind of wanted to get your guys' take on, do you guys feel like a predominant or a large amount of like what's coming out in terms of realist in a sense?
I feel like there is a lot of it, but I also would argue that there's a lot more, like in our space, I feel like there is surrealism, but I think in the outside, like broader majority of those utilizing AI to produce content, a lot of it's photorealism and the attempt to achieve photorealism, or some type of like perfection. And I think surrealism is a byproduct of things not being perfect, and it allows for like high-end concepts. But to be honest, like creating, at least the things that I've done, and I know things like DVK does as well, is significantly harder to achieve than something that is perfect or, you know, photorealistic or something. It's significantly more challenging.
Well,
and I find
the
that
photorealism of the things, photorealism was difficult 1 or 2 years ago. That was difficult. Now that's the easiest thing. Like you prompt anything to be photorealistic, and then it is immediately. And what I've seen, inside this space, everybody is trying to become more and more artistic and develop that artistic expression, and become a better artist. outside of this space, let's say what people do on Facebook or whatever, they're trying to make memes, or you'll see stuff like they try to make Harry Potter raves. So, all these kind of realistic fake things. Let's say they put Trump or whatever in a situation. All these kinds of fake news. People do that everywhere, and photorealism, and that's what people will really use it for. So memes and that kind of stuff. But in this space here, we see I would say beyond surrealism, we see, for example, a lot of abstract art, and people developing and trying to figure out how to make build their process, make a process that is difficult to copy, so that you can differentiate yourself as an artist from everybody else. That's at least a part of it. And then there's people who just use it as alone for a sketch, and then instead of upscaling, for example, they will paint the entire piece. Or oppositely, like me, I'll be developing my process as an upscaling further and adding a bunch of details, and people do it in different directions, their process.
No,
Hell yeah, man. Go
and
ahead.
I want to add to this. We had this conversation today because like the models are getting to the point where it's like hard to find imperfections. Like I've noticed that like they're just getting too good. And it's just like a lot of the time that's not what AI artists want. Like we want the janky the models, we want the janky outputs. We don't want perfection. And it's just getting to that weird point where just the models are getting so well trained, and it's just like they're coming out with these perfect images. And me, for one, I don't enjoy that. I like to have a little bit of imperfection in my work because I like to go in and add that perfection by hand. So we had this discussion today where it's just like especially with photorealism, like that was one of the topics. Like when you ask for something that's photoreal, it's just a perfect image nowadays. And it's just like back in the day, there used to be like 6, 7 fingers, 4 fingers, 3 fingers, stuff.
Well, do
like
you
that.
notice on news, I don't know why, but I've seen it a lot. If you scroll news pages, you will sometimes, relatively often, find AI work that it's like, I don't know if it's fake news, but I remember a specific one in particular. They said something about there was a flood in China, and then you see the people there, and you don't notice at first. But then I'm just immediately, because I'm looking at so much AI artwork, I'm like, there's something weird here. Is this AI? And then I'm looking at it and I notice the girl has 4 fingers. That's the first thing. The second thing is like one of the women has 3 arms, and then so on. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? Why are they putting this on the front page of a big news media where it is AI artwork? And then I was like trying to look at it through the next week or something. This is a year ago. That's what I'm talking about. And then I was looking through it, and then I saw like there's the Danish handball team. They became world champions in handball, blah blah blah. And then there was a photo of 2 of the guys, and it was an AI work. And I'm like, why? They have just been there. You had a million photos of them. Why are you taking an AI photo? I don't understand. Sometimes, why is this happening?
It's only going to keep happening and get worse. I mean, news media, we already know is pretty much purely for entertainment value at this point. It doesn't actually report like journalistic integrity anymore. So, I mean, why not? Propaganda floods our feeds every day. It's so easy to make anything look like anything.
Well, we've seen the backlash with Disney lately. We saw the Marvel, what was it, Secret Wars intro, like that was all AI generated. And then we also saw Disney with the new Loki season. They used AI generated assets in the background. And then I think for their newest Thanksgiving post on Instagram, it was AI. And there's been so much backlash and so many comments on that, and it's just like we're going to start seeing more and more of it. I just have a deep feeling. I mean, because like at the end of the day, these are companies. They're capitalistic. They want to make more revenue. They want to increase revenue and profits at all costs, and it's sad to say that it's going in that direction.
Yeah, I really do think it's just due to them trying to stretch as many of their resources as far as they can to where they don't have to spend as much money as possible. I mean, it's just how it is in like a late stage capitalism type society. It is what it is. Like, I don't know. Yeah, the thing with like journalism, and we used to have journalists that would go out to out in the field and all that. And I mean, I look at Vice. Like, I think Vice is kind of. I'm not trying to get too political, but I think Vice is kind of fallen from grace in that way. I used to love their documentaries, and now it kind of feels like they're, what's left of them, if they're even still around. I haven't really checked in on that whole situation, but kind of just making clickbait type articles, and it's like kind of the perfect combination is clickbait articles with AI, quickly generated imagery. So it just they work really well in tandem. It is interesting though when I do see like platforms like Instagram, like these companies using AI. I don't see backlash to like whatever they're putting out necessarily until they say it's AI, until someone brings it up. And it's like I'll see
Yeah.
comments and people are like, oh, it's AI. Well, I don't like it anymore. And it's like,
Yeah.
like
And then there's a whole army of angry people suddenly out of
yeah,
nowhere.
yeah.
So where do you think this is going then? Because let's just say for all of these platforms that there's now suddenly potential millions of new, let's say, journalists or people who can produce content for these platforms. Is there going to be an overload of content? Let's say, for example, on Facebook or Pinterest or some of these platforms where, let's say, if you scroll through some of these artists' accounts, like some of these people, let's say they've been sitting on the computer and producing mid-journey content all day, and they release all of it directly straight onto, for example, Pinterest, or put it on all of it somewhere online. What do you think that this does to the whole the situation of what it is, how we're doing now? I mean, certainly it's changing the whole online presence of both artwork, but also what we're doing.
It's
Honestly, I really want to add to this conversation because it's really important to me. I feel like the artist is the one that really gives the artwork value because we are the storytellers. We tell the story behind the work. We tell the intent and meaning behind the work. And I feel like art, like when it comes to like the mass volume of like art that can just be generated, I make this analogy all the time. Like if we all generated a red dog, it has no meaning. It has to have a meaning. Like otherwise, what's the point? Why'd you even make it? So like for me, when I'm doing art and coming from my perspective, like I'm going to make pieces that have meaning to me and that have this depth that I enjoy, and I want to be able to share that with the world. And I feel like that's really where the value is in AI art, when you can tell these meaningful stories that have intent behind them, and they're not just generated just to be beautiful face value like facades. Like I don't like that kind of artwork. I want depth. So that's why I
Okay.
really.
No, but this makes sense, Delta. But let's say, for example, then an artist that is validated and known. Let's say now we've had all these things with Refik Anadol, but let's say now next week he goes out and throws a whole collection of, let's say, what we could call low quality AI art. Let's say extremely simple mid-journey work and no post editing. Just makes a 500 piece collection, throws it out, and because of his name, it will surely sell. What do you think about that then? Is
Well,
that
he has a market for that. He has a market for that, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get pushback for that because that's something that's like out of left field. Like we've seen people try to join the NFT space, and they're traditional artists, they're well established, and they get pushback from their fan base and their collector base because like, why are you doing NFTs? Why are you going over there? Like, and it's just like we've seen this happen before in other situations, and
Well,
I feel.
there was this low quality. There was this guy who was doing that on purpose, actually, on Super Rare not long ago with a collection, and I don't think he had that much pushback. That sold out, and he made a
I
lot of
was just
money on
gonna
that.
say, yeah, I feel like a lot of it's narrative. I actually feel like that can work out if like the artist, I guess, poses it in a way where it's like it's commentary on the fact that like this is low quality AI art and that everybody's hating low quality AI art. I feel like
Well,
there's
then
ways
there's
to
the thing
spin
as well.
everything that
Then
can
there's
make them
the thing
digestible.
as well. Now we saw Magnific AI, and then there's a bunch of people who's like, "Wow, look at this! Now it's going from this to this," and then they're like, "Wow, it's a big change." But what I'm seeing, I'm spending a lot of time on increasing my quality. You've seen it, Steven, and making a lot of details. But a lot of people, they don't notice that, they don't see that, because let's say first of all, you have to open the image on, let's say on Twitter, for example, you have to open it, you have to zoom in, and you have to see it. And let's say, for example, when the details are like that you have to zoom in and see it, then people might not even notice that. So sometimes it happens that some artist sees it the first time, but I've known the artist for more than a year and they had never noticed before. That happens sometimes. The people just they don't look what's going on around them, I guess.
But I think that's what makes people worth being fans of. It's like those little details that only you notice that maybe not the masses do, that allows you to like really align with a particular artist. And I think that the more an artist does that, you know, it's like, for example, DVK, yes, if somebody hyper zooms into your work, they can like appreciate the fine details there. But then also if you have an Easter egg that they hyper zoom into, and like that's an Easter egg that they align with, that like Delta mentioned, it's like, you know, not conspicuous, but it's there, and maybe it's a movie that they really like, then that's like another reason. And it's like the more reasons you give people to essentially like to relate to something.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Without
I've been
being
talking
too
with
direct
both
about
Black.
it, I think makes people love one's work.
I've talked with Delta and Black a lot about this, by the part of expression and your thoughts behind your work, because that as well, just like if it's detailed or if it's quality or whatever you express, but all of these things together and how you present yourself as an artist, that's what piles up or stacks up and makes a different image of you as an artist as a whole. Yeah, absolutely.
I think something like I've definitely come to realize and accept and in a way almost embrace is like, I have, with my work specifically, I have a lot of thought behind what it is that I'm doing, and I have a belief system and a philosophy and these ideas, and a lot of them are like hard to express in words, and a lot of them are much more like just visual representations of things. And I have, at this point, like zero expectation of anyone remotely picking up on what those things are, unless I like really, really outline it and go through the whole detail, which I also don't really feel like doing. Not from a laziness standpoint, but just because like I don't really think it really needs to have that happen. And so for me, like
But wait, like, can I ask you, is it available though? Let's just say in 50 years, and for some reason you're not around anymore, and somebody's suddenly a super fan who wants to know everything about all of your artworks, and he's studying into everything. Would he be able to find out? Would he be able to like dig deep and figure out everything about every piece if he wanted to?
Yes.
I
I
actually
say that
I like that.
unequivocally,
I like
yes.
that.
Unequivocally, yes. But it goes back. So what I was going to say is, it goes back to exactly what you were saying, DVK. It's like it's a matter of if someone clicks, if someone reads, if someone dives into it, and from a just pure like marketing, you know, sales standpoint, you're looking at it like several different conversion points, you know, or conversion like points in the road where like if someone's going to convert into clicking, or convert into going to foundation, or convert into reading the description, or convert into going to reading the huge showcase of things, or they convert into actually buying something, you know, there's at all these different gates that happens at. And so to me, it's like, I already know, like, I just know that's just how it is. And so I have no expectations, but I have an open mind where it's like, I know that I guess what my point is this: with DVK's work or Delta's or anyone's here, when you put in that energy into it, I look at it as an energy transfer, where like I know that I'm putting that into it, and someone looks at it, maybe they have no idea what I have in there. Like the piece in the AI Surrealism that you had a moment ago, I have it as it's a depiction of a figure going through the third dimension into the fourth dimension and holding themselves back from going into the fifth dimension. It's called string theory. And so I have, it's a very simple Easter egg, but the number 3 in Roman numerals above the door, the number 4 in the bottom left corner next to the feet, and the number 5 above the figure going on into the right. And then we have the observer figure on the far left that's also holding a string, controlling things through observational awareness and creating matter from nothing. And so like, I don't expect people to look at, oh, this is what this means. But if you walk through a Dali exhibit or something, you also don't know what it means. You have your own interpretation of that thing. And so I think what ends up happening now is that you can look at it and you know inherently that there is meaning there. That to me is more important than someone understanding what my precise meaning is. It's much more important to me. Like if you scroll through that thread, for example, going back to what DPK said, I have like references to all those things, and I explain what all of them are a little bit more than I usually would. But like to me, it's like, it's not necessarily a matter of whether or not someone looks at it and gets it immediately. It's much more of a matter of energy transference, where like someone looks at it and they feel that energy is there. Like if they look at DVK's, they look at it and they feel there's a lot of detail before they ever even look at it and realize how much detail there really is and give the specific data on what that is. Like in this case, it's like they look at it and they feel like it has that meaning. And to me, that's like energy transference. If you as an artist put that energy into it, then when someone sees it, they will feel it, whether or not they know what that energy actually is or not.
But it's funny when people, when there's somebody who sees it and they immediately realize it. I really love that experience. No matter how many times you experience it, every time when somebody immediately can read it and figure out what it means, that's amazing. And it's not that often though.
And also, like, just to kind of give a shout out real quick to the whole AI Surrealism group, there's like 60 artists in there. It's some of the most wild work you will ever see. We had our very first one earlier in the year. I'm not sure exactly when it was. Maybe it was like April or May or so. And it was in the World Trade Center with Super Chief. And, you know, there's just an amazing amount of work in there. And what's really fascinating is if you go through what was released then, and then you go through and look at a lot of the same artists now in this larger group drop that's like this open edition kind of event for the next, I guess, 6 more days now at this point. There's a lot of like super, you know, entry level prices, if you will, to get into some larger artist work, by the way. If you don't have something that you want somebody, you should definitely go check it out. But you can see the progression, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about the progression, a lot of the work over time. You can look and see the progression of a lot of these artists. And I feel like I look at it with that lens because of working with like Artist Incubator and stuff. And we do a lot of critiques and stuff every week, and like I kind of see the progress that people make, and you can really pick up on these. Like if you do compare and contrast and look at a lot of this stuff, gas has been really high, so I don't think there's like as many mints as are justified in this as of right now. So hopefully more mints will come through. But I think like when you go through and look at it just from the work itself, it's incredible. And there's just some absolute like crazy ideas in here. I'm not trying to hype it up, but I definitely want people to go check it out. It was on the front page of Foundation yesterday. It's definitely getting some traction, at least from views and the actual like onlooker standpoint. But there is just some incredible stuff in here. And I just want to kind of give a bit of a shout out. Also, big shout out to Super Chief, Exquisite Workers, Anna Dart, Roger House as well, who put like a ton of effort into curating the collection and helping artists who are working in this like surrealism type of aesthetic and kind of visual philosophy to get the traction and just to have it out there and put out there, which I think is, to me, is more important than the sales. Sales are nice. They're nice to have, right? But actually getting it out there and being able to like put it out and support and exhibit that is just incredible.
But then there's also the thing to note. Let's say right now, because of gas is so high, if there is not going to be minted very many of one, let's say from some of the artists, you might end up getting a part of a very few, let's say, very small edition scale piece. Let's say there's less than 10. I mean, as long as there's only around 10 or something of a piece, there is still a high potential of that piece becoming valuable over time with an artist spending so much time in the space at a point like this, and just for the ones who think about that out there as well.
Wait, Power has a piece in this collection? I gotta go buy it.
Yes, I love his work.
I do too.
From him, he's incredibly talented.
I got into a bid war the other day, and I have to, like, I love his work. I just enjoy it, so I'm gonna go buy that piece right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna get one tonight.
There's a lot of sick pieces. I was just browsing through it as you guys were talking, but gas is wild right now. Like it's double.
It's pretty bad.
It's double. Like I was gonna pay 0.02 to mint a 0.01 piece, like 0.02 in gas, so 0.03 total to mint 0.01.
Yeah, that's what sucks. Like we were talking about that in the group chat yesterday, in the Surrealism group, or maybe it was earlier today. It was just like, it sucks because we ended up going like a lower entry point just to get the work out there. I think that was more important than anything else. And like the show earlier in the year, I mean, everyone had like 1-to-1s and there weren't many editions, and it was much higher pricing and everything else. And this is like, to me, I was like, man, like everyone's going so low, like this thing is going to get like a massive amount of mints, you know. But because gas has been so high, it's been the gas has been just as, if not more expensive than the actual mints themselves, and it kind of sucks, you know.
I think the price is still very low, but I don't know. There's always a thing with gas for people in this space, and for some people, like myself, if that's a piece I want, I'll just mint it anyway. I mean, it's still, the price is still extremely low for artwork. For most of these artists, they sell their work for a lot more normally.
Yeah, mine. In the first Surrealism show, my 1-to-1 went for 0.75 ETH, and I have this one up for 0.02. So I think
Yeah,
I think like
it's like
it's a pretty
tremendous.
significant like entry level
Yeah.
price on a lot of stuff. And a
I
lot of
wish there
people
was like a
that
way
too,
to sweep. Like they need to have a way to sweep multiple pieces at once.
That
like
would be a
batch
good idea.
together.
Yeah, make a system so that you can just like say, okay, I want to mint 3, and you just pick 3 or 5 or 10.
Yeah, because
At once.
I would gladly pay 0.02 in gas if I was like picking up all of the 3 or 4 that I like right now. But it's hard to justify doing that 4 times. You know what I mean? And probably other
Yeah,
people are
exactly.
feeling the same way.
Did you
That's a
guys
good
see
idea.
the thing with MetaMask? I don't know if it was like a meme or just a shit post where it was like you could watch an ad for 7 minutes just to like push a gas fee through. And yeah, I was like, yo, that's crazy.
7 minutes is an eon. I feel like I'd rather just pay the gas on that one.
Yeah.
But wanted to ask you guys, DVK Black, how do you feel like this has changed as a result of like, you know, AI tools advancing over these last few months from originally what this collection was when the world first dropped months ago? I think I actually went to the opening months ago at Super Chief, so shouts out them. As you said, Black too, just like amazing team, awesome location as well, and just like the work that they're doing for artists all around is incredible. So big shout out to them.
I think as far as like how I feel, like I'll only speak to my own work because I know I can understand the difference because it's mine, obviously. But like the piece that I had in the very first one, you know, I did the one this time in a very similar style. It's sort of like the style of my Penumbra series, which is very like, you know, surrealistic in general, anyways. And the advancement of some of the models and just sort of my process has evolved a little bit. Like if you were to look at my original piece in the very first drop, the colors are a little more stark and it's a little bit flatter feeling. And in this work, even though it's a very similar recognizable style and you can pick it out and be like, oh, that's, you know, that's Black's, or that's, you know, that is very similar to this one. There's a significant I would say the quality of the rendering and shading and depth and that sort of thing is much more advanced, and kind of working with a little bit more, like for me personally in my style, I'm working with a little bit more like subtle colors and while having other things pop and other things kind of pull back a little bit. And I think that it's allowed me to do a little bit of that. This one was created with almost the exact same process as I was before. And you know, one of the things that has changed is like, when I'm working in my like kind of penumbra style of stuff, I have different ingredients of works that I developed earlier in the year that I kind of refer to as like blend ingredients that I blend with things. But I end up creating the scenes and what the actual kind of like visual subject matter is by creating outputs in Midjourney first. So I'm prompting things. And so what you can end up seeing is like how that process has changed a little bit, and then that affects the final result, even though my process is the same with utilizing the same kind of blend ingredients to get similar outputs. The actual like scene setting and scene creation process has evolved some to give more like depth and some of the more like rendering capabilities that you see in like this piece and the string theory piece versus the other, and some of my more like original or earlier works this year in that same style. And so I think that's definitely something that has evolved, but as well as like the upscaling technology and different things like that has helped out. And I think overall you end up seeing like the quality get a little bit better. And I'm sure, you know, I'll pass over to DBK, but I'm sure he would probably say the same thing about quality, especially with his process.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I finished developing my upscaling since then. But in my piece in the first was a video piece, so that was also a completely different process. But for example, for that one, the way I made that one, you can't do anymore because the AI tools got changed and developed and so on, and it's not a point where you have an option to keep it held back. Like with Midjourney, you can choose an older version, but not in all tools. It's not all tools that you can do that. But overall, with the whole collection, you can see a huge development for many of the artists and for the tools. So I would say you can see that the quality got updated or developed, and I would say as well for the surrealism part and abstract part that developed a lot as well. There's been over I would say the last 6 months or so, there's been a lot of focus more on abstractions in art, where before, as I would say in those months before, there was a lot of focus on the realism, and because that was at the point where the photorealism got more developed, and people were doing a lot of this photorealistic art back then, and now people already got tired of that, of course. So it changes like that. As more and more people can do a specific style, then people get bored with looking at that, and then they're looking for something else.
Yeah, scrolling through the some of the earlier sales within the world, and it is cool to see like how it's changed. Agree that it is way more photorealistic, as you just said, DVK.
If you go all the way down, I think mine may have been. I think I had the first auction. I think it was that bottom left one. You can see what I'm talking about in terms, just as a small little sidebar. You can see what I'm talking about in terms of like the color and like the way
a lot stronger colors here.
Yeah, a lot stronger, brighter, starker colors. But then in the newer one, it's more subtle. And even though it has those kind of like, there's a couple spots that have that stark color palette. It's not as like, it's much more refined in the newer one, but it still is a very similar type of style and sort of like visual aesthetic of things. But I think that's an outlier because I feel like those are, it's hard.
So was that from feedback towards your art that you got, or how did you decide to develop? I mean, I've been doing the same, and I think a lot of artists ourselves do like those kind of colors. But there's a lot of people when they say, okay, if we have to put it on the wall, we can't have it that strong the colors, as an example. But what did you think, and what have been part of your process? So
I don't like to feel controlled by something.
No, of course.
And so I feel like with the brighter colors, they were almost a byproduct of the process and not necessarily my intent, even though I embrace them. And especially in my like penumbra works, it's very, I would say like the color palette is almost iconic in a way within the penumbra works. It's very, very, very stark colors, while having like good texture and stuff too. There's a hard balance to achieve within that. But I felt like it was I feel like it was just kind of forcing me to be that way. And with this, now I will say like my next penumbra piece I'm working on, penumbra 6, like it's going to have, I think, that same kind of stark color palette because that fits in with everything. And this is a bit of a sidebar, but I think to me, it's like, I want to explore more of that subtlety, at least to be able to have the ability to do that. Like for example, my Hands of the Faithful collection, like there's this sense of like power within the subtlety of emotion that's there, and a lot of that comes in through the color. And so I actually started utilizing some of the same prompt elements in creating my scene creation for this specific piece, as well as a piece I did for Builder's DAO, the box exhibition a month or two ago. I used a very similar prompt structure to create the scene, and then I started working with my like penumbra like blend ingredients in order to get that aesthetic that's there. So it was a matter of like not being like super locked down and being able to have the ability to kind of go where I wanted to go with it.
So you're prompting a piece first that takes kind of like mixes some of the colors out. So it's like adding more white, you could say, to the let's say you have a really strong red, you add more white.
Yes,
white, it becomes less red.
Yep, exactly. It's a matter of kind of pulling. Well, the original stuff I had come up with this, what I would refer to as a broken prompt that just like basically creates trash. It's just horrible looking thing. It's very, almost, if you can call it contemporary, you can, but it looks horrible, but it's very, very bright colors, and there's very strong compositional elements. And so when I mixed it with the other ingredients that I had, it would give these really wild color outputs of things. And so that process, I've removed the broken prompt output in my process and started having a little bit more control over what the scenes are, and then blending with everything else. And with that comes more control with color as well.
And that's progress for you as an artist and developing.
Yeah. And like, I think one thing, people don't see this a lot, but like the amount of, I think color is a huge thing for me. And I think, a lot of what I do is color corrections, like the original versus this final piece. There's so many different things. Like, and one of the last things I do is I will, after I upscale everything as like a final version, I then bring that in and then I do several different layers of color corrections. Like this is actually like 4 or 5 layers flattened together, all having different color corrections and erasing and kind of masking out different areas. Like if you look at like the bottom of it, that kind of gradient going up through it, that's a little bit orangey, or then goes into the yellow, like all that is layers of color correction going on that I'm playing with the saturation and I'm blending it all together in Photoshop. And so I think like, there's things like that you cannot control in AI yet. And I think a lot of it has to do with just like artistic freedom and what you want to do with it, and being able to just like move things around, and changing colors is like a huge part of that, And so, color is huge. I think a lot of times with AI specifically, you end up with the same color palette all the time. So I think it's important either you embrace that and you use that with your journey of things, or if you want to have control over it and not being controlled by it, then you have to take it and break it and start doing other things to it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, dude, this palette is like really, really unique. Something that I feel like a lot of artists haven't experimented with, or definitely not as frequently. But on the topic of your guys' creative process, I came across a tweet on like that Austin posted about his process, and I'll pin that up now. But I feel like all of this is so cool to hear, yet it's not something that I think a lot of artists widely share. Have you guys like chosen maybe not to share your process, or do you feel like your time is better spent elsewhere? Like, what's your thoughts on showing the whole process of like you getting that initial prompt, or even like what you prompted, and then like showing the post processing until you get to the final piece, and some of the decisions you made, even talking over some of those decisions?
Well,
I've definitely shown my process. that's for
Yeah,
sure.
I've definitely
Like,
showed my process as
like
well. We've
DBK
been
and I,
live.
when we were in Lisbon, like
Yeah.
we screen recorded everything, and I have several threads after Lisbon where like I literally went through and showed my entire thing. Like my prompts are in there, like literally my entire process is there. Even earlier in the year when Blend came out, I did an entire Blend process tutorial thread where like to me it's different than like showing how I specifically made something. It's much more about like showing how you can use the same thing to make something for yourself. Like to me, that's how I look at it. And I don't like share like everything I did for every piece. But when I come up with a new way to work with something, I often share that.
Yeah, I like to share a lot about the process, but there's also lots I don't share. Don't share, for example, how I'm doing my upscaling because nobody else can do that. So of course I don't want to share that part. But a lot of other things like just how to use the different tools in simpler ways. I've shared a lot of that, for example, with Delta Source and many other artists.
Yeah, I've been. I mean, I obviously do. I don't for like all my pieces. I make all of them from my photographs, but I've been super open with sharing my process. Obviously, like Delta and I, we had a great discussion about it, and it was really fulfilling to have him reach out and just be curious. Like, I mean, I feel kind of mixed on sharing it like publicly on the timeline at times. But, like, part of me wonders if it sort of dampens the magic of the art itself, if that makes sense. And it's like I'm usually trying to walk this line of not showing too much all of the time, and then like showing just enough to like give people an idea that there is work going into like what I'm doing. Like the piece that you pinned up, which has like a horribly drawn sketch that I only spent like 2 minutes on because really I'm just trying to get the idea out. Like it looks like dog shit. Like I used to draw and paint a ton, but I just haven't drawn in a long time. But I usually just do sketches now for these pieces just to get the ideas out. But yeah, like for a lot of these pieces, it can take anywhere from like 5 days to 3 weeks to like a month. And I'll go in and do the digital painting, and I talk to Delta a lot about that, and like texture is something I love working with. I usually like take photos of just things like grass, cat fur, concrete, and then manipulate them in Photoshop, and then apply the texture over. And yeah, when I made that post, I was not expecting it to do as well as it did. But I was really thankful, and I've had people ask, and I usually try and be as transparent as I can, because I think like there is a problem with social media where people are constantly consuming all the art that we're putting all this time into, and they're not realizing that there is a major process behind these pieces, and it's like
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Absolutely.
yeah, and that's one reason. Like I think showing the process is vital to like proving. Like I had Violet Objects, who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. He ended up picking a piece up last week from me. He placed a bid because I showed a before and after of a piece, like a photograph, and I showed all what I did with composite, and he was like, "Whoa, that is insane." So yeah, I think process now more than ever in this social media age where everyone's attention span is just like run short. I think it's super vital to really show that, there's a lot of effort that goes into these pieces that a lot of people are just absorbing within like 10 seconds and then scrolling past. So yeah, I think it's a great thing to showcase now more than ever.
I think so. Like in my studies of putting out content and videos, etc. I find that like artist creative process, that whole start to finish, I think it just performs really well. And I think it's a good showcase of like the artist's talent. because you really get to see, you know, like seeing a finished product without any context, I think is you can still be impressed and appreciate the finished product, but like showing how you guys got there from just like the idea from an empty canvas, an empty, just like a few words that you're putting into Midjourney, etc., and then showing the post processing and all of that, it's like, damn, it came this far. It wasn't just like something that just was spat out of Midjourney and that's what it was. I just find that I'm wildly impressed by it. So it's cool for you guys to take us on the journey.
A post I made a few months back, just on this topic, I asked like, would people prefer seeing process or learning purpose? And what was really interesting from the result of that was it was kind of a larger post. And one of the things that I noticed as an overall trend was that most artists who replied said they wanted to see process. They'd rather see process behind a work. And then most collectors who replied with saying they'd rather see purpose behind a work. And so I think a lot of it's like, who are you talking to? You know, who is the audience? And obviously there's a mix of both for everyone, but I think it's important to kind of look at it that way. Like artists are always, I think a lot of us in this space, especially with the tooling and things like this, you're really interested in like how someone did something. And collectors, when they're looking at it as a piece of fine art to collect, they're looking at the why, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as a collector, I really do enjoy seeing the process, but I probably have bought more art based on the reasoning behind the image, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nikki, where do you feel like you best see that reasoning though? Do you feel like you see it in the description? Do you feel like it's just like easily communicated through the work?
Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? Because a lot of the, like, I picked up some of Austin's work after I spoke to him. Same with Law. Actually, I think I own something from every single person in this chat. But yeah, I feel like the one-to-one connection is really important, but probably impossible to do with every single fan of your work. It's unrealistic, at least, to have a one-on-one conversation with every single person. But I think things like this, where you can at least hear the artist if you're not watching it on YouTube, explain what they're thinking, what's going on behind their work. I mean, think about when you go to a museum, right? I never get the headphone thing, but a lot of people do. Why? Because every image, like if you're looking at old art that looks like, like religious art of Jesus and stuff like that, it all looks the same, right? Like, I don't know okay, it's Jesus again. But when you hear like why this is an important piece, like who did this, what was going on at the time, and how religion was impacting the world at that time, it's like, oh, that's actually pretty interesting. That makes the piece resonate a lot more than just another image of Jesus, which may be an impressive image, but may not really matter outside of it having religious importance. So I think, yeah, I mean, that's how I end up collecting a lot. Obviously, you're attracted by the initial visual appeal, but there's a lot of visually appealing stuff out there. How do I decide who to collect? It used to be the patron of that art kind of dictated who bought it. If famous people started collecting someone's work, they became really popular among lesser known, just average people, and those people would start buying prints or trying to get their hands on originals or whatever. But now you guys have so much potential to reach out and be part of bigger communities, widespread communities, broaden your market in like a millisecond compared to what traditional artists of the past had to do. So yeah,
well,
I think
it still
that's
means a lot who's going to talk about your art.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And we talked about this yesterday on a space I was on, but like when Pac went on that bidding spree the other day, a lot of people started bidding behind him just because it's him bidding.
But that's also engagement farm, because then they can like talk about how to bid in a bidding war against Pac.
Of course, exactly. And I've been in legit bidding wars with him before, and of course, still posted about it, right? Because he's huge. So that aspect of it, there's like elements of art that translate, of art rarity, of art's cultural significance. Those kinds of things still translate to Web3 art, digital art, just as much as they did in the trad art world. So, but I think the primary thing is now the translation of the connection with the fan or the connection with the collector. It's a different translation than it used to be. It's quicker, it's faster, but it also means that there's a lot more noise to sift through as a collector. So, yeah.
No, and I want to touch on this as well because I'm also a pretty big collector in this space. And for me, I want to talk to artists. I want to talk to the artists. I want to get to know them. That's why I bought so much of Austin's work, because after we talked, I'm like, man, this is awesome work. I got to talk to the artist. I got to know why he does art, the meaning behind his art. And I feel like that adds more value. That adds so much more value than me just looking at the piece of artwork and buying it. So like, I want to be able to connect with the artist and just chat with them. And I want collectors to do the same for me. Like, if you want to talk to me, you own a piece of work, and even if you don't own a piece of work and you're just looking at my work and you want to talk about it, just message me. Like, I really want these conversations, because for me, they add value, and it's a two-way value. It's not just one way, and I appreciate those connections.
And it's
Right,
not
Delta.
about sales; it's about the experience. It's much more about the experience. I think that's something that we look over too abruptly here in this space, is that there is the expression and creation on the artist side, and then there's the experience of the people who view it, whether they buy it or just see it. And I'm just as guilty as this as anybody, is just scrolling right past stuff. You see some, oh, that's cool, like whatever, oh cool, whatever, like that's the environment which we're in. But sometimes you have to just like stop and absorb it. And a lot of times I find like spaces like this and streams and whatnot are a great way to do that. I know I've done a bunch of live streams here recently in the last few months with Join, and we highlight artists' work that are on showcases and stuff, and like really speaking with them on camera, going through everything that they have in their work and their narrative and process and all this stuff. Like, you end up kind of building almost like an artistic bond with that person. You're like, man, like, you really start to feel that and vibe with it. I picked up a piece of Austin's from a space that we had a few weeks ago because of that specific reason. I was like, man, like, all about it. Wherein, like, once you start to absorb that, you have more context. You have more of an experience with it, and that makes you feel like you're more related to the work, and that makes you want to acquire it as well if you're in a position or have the desire to do so. So I think we have to try and experience work. I think that's the thing that will add so much more value here, is to experience stuff, not just post, GM, buy, collect, sales, DM. Like, it's an experience of things. That's what art is. And I feel like that's something that's missing from the grand scheme of things. That we got to kind of put that back into central focus, in my opinion.
So on that note of experiencing, though, I feel like curation also differs, I think, like from Web3 to traditional. How do you guys feel? Like, I guess, is there an experience that you prefer? Do you prefer like the curation experience in Web3 and how that's displayed, or do you prefer the curation experience in the traditional world? Or are there pros and cons to each? Like, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
It's pros and cons to each, for sure. And the typical one in the traditional art world is they're gonna be like, what can your price be? And they want to add, let's say, they want to tell you to double your prices so that they can take 50% of that, so that you still get the same, and then they will sell your work and so on. But here, there's been a lot of focus on trying to basically elevate artists, and for curators to take smaller percentages and so on. And it's going a little bit back and forth. And some platforms take 5%, some take 15%, and so on. So it's a development. I don't think that anyone in the space has really figured it out yet. And there's a lot of different interpretations of what curation is here.
I think that we haven't really figured out exactly how to experience digital art yet outside of the screen. Obviously, you can look at it on your foundation profile or whatever. A lot of galleries will put up like TVs basically to display the art, and I've seen some really like unique setups for that. But put that in contrast to, like, I went to the Whitney Museum over the summer, and Josh Klein has an exhibit there. He did have an exhibit there at the time. You can't buy any of the pieces. Like, it would be impossible to actually purchase the work, but you're walking through an experience the whole time. It's like 2 stories of his work. It's fucking awesome. But there's video, there's like physical objects, there's sight, smell, sound, auditory stuff as well, right? And it was an experience that I spent probably an hour and a half walking through, right? Because there was just so much to see and consume. And learn about his process. He's the son of immigrants, and you start to learn about his background and stuff through the work that you're viewing and hearing and everything like that. And his commentary on reality is really, really unique. But how do we do that in Web3? I'm not sure how that happens yet, right?
Well, I can say, at least I know I'm working with this company that they're developing these screens that has more than 1 billion colors, and when these will be available for everybody, then you'll be able to show this artwork that you collect on a level where you feel like it's worthy. So the way it can show the details, there will be no pixelation whatsoever. You can get a, let's say, a 75-inch screen or 98.5-inch screen, and they're affordable already. So I'm just looking forward to see them when more companies going to get into this market and compete with this. Because let's say the frame, for example, right now is horrible compared to these. These are about 100 times better. So yeah, I've been showing my art on a prototype of these screens, and yeah, looking really much forward to see that people can have these screens at home. Because imagine, let's say, Nikki, you have lots of artwork collected, and Delta, you have lots of artwork collected, and when you have people over and you, or just for yourself, you could have all of that work displayed on this. And this is not a TV screen. This is an art display, a screen made specifically to show it in the best possible quality it can be shown. So, and it gives a whole new meaning to showing digital art. It's completely different. I mean, it's so good that it's convincing people that the artwork is a real oil painting. It, like, if you have a piece that is with texture and it looks like an oil painting, well, on the screen it will be so convincing that people will believe it's an oil painting until that you change the piece on the screen and it will be like, whoa, what's going on?
That's
DDK,
pretty cool.
what's that brand or company called?
Any wall.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I think that I have like mixed thoughts on the screens. I think that there are like TVs, for example, are definitely not the best way to display digital art. But like there are, for example, Super Chief has like the I believe it's the Scene on a Whim canvases, which I think are cool. I think that's like a really good way to actually display the art. At the same time, though, and like I'm excited to check out the ones that you just mentioned, DVK. But I feel like screens are like limiting to a certain extent. And I think what could be really interesting going forward is just like AR and how we can see, you know, for example, Nikki, you were mentioning you were walking through that like experience for an hour and a half, and I'm assuming that like, you know, there was stuff on the walls, but then there were sculptures and spells and all of these different things. And I think it's going to be cool to be able to like see objects in 3D or just like at least, I don't know, 2D animations through a headset. And at a certain point, you'll just be able to experience it, I guess, more realistically.
Yeah, I think we're trying to replicate the paintings a lot, which makes sense, and a lot of art looks great that way. But I think we have the opportunity to not be limited by two-dimensional space anymore. I think actually I should say this: Beeple did a great job with his event. I saw the videos from it, but literally like the whole environment was screens, right? Like even the pillars were screens. Every wall was a screen, and he leveraged that to show animations and have things movement all over the walls at all times. So I think you're right. AR is definitely something that can improve our experience with digital art, but also just like leveraging the 3D space that we have. I mean, you can projection map. We saw that with the Van Gogh exhibit that went all around the U.S. I mean, sorry. Yeah, I guess it went around the U.S. and probably overseas too. Lots of projection mapping in that exhibit. We have the ability to, create screens that are curved, circular, spherical, whatever. So, I mean, I think we just got to get more creative and put the investment
Well,
into those things.
with that, of course, as well, that's something we're going to see more and more. There is these different companies. There's that Japanese company where there's these screens that you can basically curve and bend as you want, and you can put it anywhere. The problem right now is just it's too expensive still. But in a few years, when it becomes more available, then yeah, we will see more and more galleries have that. Another thing on the 3D node, you can already create 3D objects with the AI, and that is still something as well we will see more and more developed. So imagine you create something with I mean, of course, now you could just create some, let's say, a sketch and then 3D sculpt it in ZBrush yourself. But in the future, you'll be able to do that and have directly the sculpt in 3D and then go and 3D print it immediately. And then you could exhibit that. So then you will have a physical piece that you created with AI and then 3D print it. And as well,
Yeah.
in
Oh, go
Lisbon,
ahead.
in Lisbon, Black and I, we had Art Matter print or paint our pieces with that robot, and they flew it from New York to Lisbon overnight. Like it was painting overnight, and then Faye from Art Matter, she took it on. It was the only option. Took it on, packed it up. It was still wet. Packed it up, wrapped it in the suitcase, and brought it over there. And when we opened it, our fingers were full of paint because it was still wet. It paints with oil. So yeah, it takes months to dry.
That's funny that you mentioned Art Matter. I met them at an event like probably a month or so ago, and did like a tiny mic interview with Faye. So it's funny, very very cool. Just like people all around there. But
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Go ahead,
I think stuff like that's going to be like, I think they're pioneering in a lot of different ways, and I think others will begin to do the same. Where like there's going to be, I don't think one way is the way of the future. I think it's both ways. I think the digital is going to break out into AR, VR on this side, and then physical things that are replicated in a traditional physical way from a digital source. And I think both of them are going to go, you're going to go like this. And I think that's going to be the ecosystem in general. It's going to be a split. I don't think it's like, oh, the future is all this or the future is all that. It's going to be a mix of things. And I think diversifying what you're doing is great, but also keeping your eye on the ball of what you want and how you are moving. I think some people, while there may be this massive, 3D technological advancement or AR that's going to be advancing, like that doesn't mean that you have to do that either. And I think that's the beauty of a lot of the new technology with AI as well as anything else. It's like, just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it. But some people will, and they'll get really, really good at a specific thing. And I think to me, it's like, own the thing you're doing, own the tools that are going to be on the path to that. And like for me, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about, as well as like DVK just expressed that he's doing the same thing, is like thinking ahead. Like we already know we've seen such an evolution over such a short period of time. If I told myself a year and a half ago, if I showed myself what I'm making today, what I'm able to achieve today versus what was then, I would be like, no way, dude, no way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But projecting that ahead and be like, what is the thing that I don't think I can do right now that will be done later? Like I may not know exactly what it is, but I know the trajectory of it. Like the large text that I'm writing, that may end up being like a 900,000 word religious document, and that editing that would take like 2 months for someone literally no sleep, would take the entire time just to read through it once. But I know that in 6 months, 12 months, when that's achieved, I'll have an AI LLM locally on my machine that can edit the entire thing perfectly for me. So I'm already planning ahead. Like that technology doesn't exist right now, but it will in the future, given the trajectory of things. I have zero doubt in my mind. I know that will be there. And so I'm planning ahead for it. I'm not working with what's happening now, with what my capabilities are now. My biggest lesson over the last year and a half to 2 years is planning ahead for what will be. Because then you'll be able to execute on what's happening at that time versus just starting on something to execute at that time. You'll already be ready and waiting for it,
That's philosopher Black taking us to the future.
Dude, we got to hear from Lug Gang, man. I'm talking about philosophy. I'm not sure if you say anything, but I definitely want to pass him the mic and a hot potato, man. What's up?
Yeah, dude, I actually want to touch on that future potential tech that hasn't been made yet, because as most of you know, my work is based off of my lucid dreams and stuff, and I've been following this really closely because at the moment my work is very similar to yours. Like 95% of everything I post and put out there is conceptual work. It's not the final piece, and maybe 5% is then like final pieces or pieces that I've like come back to. But I've seen tech that scans your brain waves and is able to replicate using AI what is going on in there. So at the moment they're doing tests with like envisioning, like if you just envision a cat, the AI starts generating a cat similar to what you're seeing. And there is a Japanese company that's looking at dreams to be able to put your dreams into a scene. And that is one thing that I cannot fucking wait to happen, because if I'm able to actually take out full-blown scenes and videos off of these dreams, that would be literally dream come true, right?
Yeah, that's wild.
I think we could have like a whole other stream on just like the lucid dreams and that whole entire topic.
It's on, bro. I have like, I'm sure if I compile all of my notes and the different pages and the notes on my phone, I would have multiple books of just full-blown, very intricate stories and storylines and concepts that like I've extracted out of these experiences. So it's a forever going conversation in my head.
Law, are you gonna get the Neuralink when you can?
Dude, I do not think I will.
I think I will. I think I definitely will.
Wow, really?
All right,
Yeah.
you can let us know how it goes.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
really curious.
literally.
I'm really curious about that. And I mean, I was thinking several years ago that I never want to die. I'll become an AI eventually. You know, I'll live forever like that.
DVK,
I,
looking at your profile picture, man. I feel like I'm half convinced you already are.
Yeah, DVK is an embodiment of the art, honestly.
yeah.
He's hooked in. But I think it's a good time to wrap up, guys. I want to thank everybody for jumping on. Like, hey, just you guys jumping on stage today and sharing, diving into your work, diving into the collections, into views, into AI surrealism, to string theory, into strawberry lips as well. Like, it's been awesome just hearing your guys' processes, seeing how much work has gone into this, and like watching it come to fruition. I just think is a beautiful thing. And I appreciate you guys as well, Nikki, Law, and Austin, just sharing your thoughts, chopping it up as well. I liked coming across your creative process, Austin, and getting to see that as like I've had my own questions on like how you take those photos and like some of the edits that are done on top of them. So it's cool to see the behind the scenes there. But also want to thank everybody who's joined us today in the audience. You guys are exceptional. The reason why we do this, and thank you for showing love to the wonderful artists that are up here and how much like hard work that they've put in. And want to encourage you guys to follow them on X. You can get their handles from the pinned tweets. And also, if you enjoy the content, feel free to subscribe to Eminent on YouTube. Would appreciate support there. You can get that from the link in our bio. And any closing statements, guys? Want to throw it to the group and see if you guys have any last things you want to share.
Go mint brain drops.
Go mint
that.
AI surrealism.
Yeah.
Well, a fun thing for ending would be if any of you want to analyze my piece for the AI surrealism with the strawberry lips.
I'll pull it. Wait, I was gonna say I'll pull it up, but DVK, I know you're like I have to get a certain link from you.
No,
you
I mean you can just take the one that I linked it in the Twitter space. You can take that one
Gotcha.
because that one has a zoom up or a close up from the piece, so you can actually see a little bit of what it's about there.
Let me see. I don't want to grab it from. Is it like pinned in the Twitter space?
Yeah, it's like I think it's number 3.
Oh, did I pin it?
No, I did.
You pinned it? Let me see. Or can you just send it in the chat? I just don't want to. I feel like if I open up the Twitter space on laptop, it's going to screw.
All right. 1 second here. I got it. It's in the chat there now. Yeah.
Sweet. All right, sweet. Just sharing that. All right, let's go. We get to do the deep dive.
And yeah, you can actually open the full piece as well, because you can see it as well. But yeah, so she has strawberry lips and a bit of leaves.
Where's the if I open
this one, just that
one?
one, just go with that one because it's just a little bit edited colors and the text on top, but else than that, it's a full piece.
It's strawberry. Then the title is strawberry lips and a beard of leaves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the texture here is absurd, man.
If I was still doing psychedelics, I would be just opening this up for about 2 to 3 hours.
Well, that is the idea of it. Imagine a little bit like your favorite movie that you've seen a million times. Well, that's what I'd like for you to experience with my art. That you'd like to dive into it and see it again, and then every time you'll see a little bit more, you'll realize, okay, there's a face there, right where you have your mouse right now. Yeah, there's a face.
Yeah.
And there's apples, there's all kinds of berries, there's things going on everywhere, not only her. Well, okay, so I'll help you a little bit here. So what the stage we're at right now in the world, the whole thing with gender is a little bit of a blur for a lot of people. So that's why she has the feminine strawberry lips and a beard of leaves. The manly part, maybe a little bit of a dry beard of leaves. But
Yeah, dude, I'm thinking like these individual scenes are like wildly interesting to me. But I think this is kind of touches back to what we were talking on before. It's like, do you really want to know everything? Like, for example, if Black just laid out the handbook to the whole like chronological story or like all of the background in his work, I feel like I would appreciate it less if I just came across the handbook rather than if he just left me the Hansel and Gretel trail and I had to like follow the Hansel Gretel and trail myself.
Well, that's very different for each person, I think. Some people want artwork to be extremely simple and just straightforward, and some people love it when it's complicated and you have to think about it really much. It's different it's different how we appreciate things.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just depends on how long you've been appreciating a certain type of artwork, because that's true of pretty much every art form except music, which either you basically listen to music one of two ways. Genetically, you can hear all of the individual elements, or you can hear just like the composition. But I think every other art form is like you almost have to build a taste for it over time and an understanding. Like if you go and watch, I know we've been talking about Space Odyssey earlier, but if you watch Space Odyssey as like the first movie you've ever seen, you'll fucking hate movies. Like you
Well,
like,
I think you're
what is
right.
it?
I think you're right, because let's say, for example, generative art, lots of people, they don't understand it, they don't know what it's about, and they feel like it's just like a few dots here and there and then completely random. But when you then start, let's say you know a lot about code, and then you figure out it's also a lot about trying to make the most complicated piece of art or a special piece of artwork with the simplest form of code, and you start to understand that part, then suddenly it becomes interesting. And the same for all of these different kind of art forms. When you start knowing more about it and you dig into it and understand how does it develop, like also for the same thing for let's say for curators or writers about all kinds of art, when they start knowing more specific about art, then there's also an interest that there's a chance that they'll be interested in it. Let's say, for example, in Lisbon, there was a writer from ArtNet, a curator from ArtNet, and she was extremely much against AI. She really didn't like what we were doing there. And then she was just standing in the background and watching my process there for more than half an hour. And suddenly she came over to me and talked to me, and it's like, wow, now I understand. And now I see there's a lot of things to this, and there's a lot of work in your process. It's not just from one step and writing a few things and then you're done. There's a lot of things to it. And she couldn't know that if she didn't see my process there, or if she didn't dig into it. You can also dig into many artists show a bit about the process on maybe on their website or on Twitter, but if you don't do that, if you don't look into it, then it's, at least for me, it's hard to understand if people just dislike something when they don't know what it's about.
100%. I like these post-credit scenes that we're doing, DVK.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. I like that to just like end it up on something interesting as well.
Yeah, it's a good like thing to spice it up at the end. But want to echo what I said before. Just thank you to everybody for joining, both up here on stage and everybody in the audience for joining. Really appreciate all just like the love that was shown by the audience, and B, just you guys diving in as deep as we did. Had a blast tonight. But want to wrap up on that note. I'm gonna play some music and gonna wish everybody a wonderful evening, morning, wherever you are. Catch you guys on the next one.
See ya. Thanks again.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Yo, Black,
Yeah.
I like how you were vibing in the start when the music was on.
It was good. It was super chill.